You get to come home early, so at least have dinner ready by the time I get back.
As soon as Joseph walked in and saw the empty table, he raised his voice. I'm sorry. I went grocery shopping on my way home, so dinner got delayed. But I'm tired too, you know.
Ha! Don't compare my job with your sitting around desk job. You're a woman, even if you work, it's your duty to handle everything at home.
Joseph, who was gentle and sincere before marriage, turned into a moral harasser once we got married.
Do you understand? Ugly and plain women like you are a burden on society. The least you can do is serve me as if your life depends on it since I married you.
Even with these words, there's only one reason I'm enduring this. To protect my daughter, Grace. He would probably hurt Grace or take her custody just to make me obey. One day, during those painful days of having no choice but to obey Joseph.
Hey! My lover is pregnant. She seems to have a boy.
With an excited look, Joseph thrust the divorce papers in front of me.
If Grace were a boy, I would have kept you as my trophy wife. But I'm done with you. Take her and leave here now. What? Are you abandoning Grace too?
Don't be so harsh. I'll pay child support. Take good care of Grace. I couldn't help but shed tears of relief. Now I can finally escape this life. I see. Pretending to be sad, I signed the divorce papers. He looked satisfied, thinking things were going his way. Seeing his face, long-suppressed emotions welled up inside me. Don't think you'll have a happy future. I'm Victoria. I'm 34 and the wife of a CEO. That sounds impressive, but actually, I work part-time as a clerk at another company. I live with my husband, Joseph, who is 4 years older than me, and our 3-year-old daughter, Grace. I met Joseph at a party I attended at the request of a subordinate at work. I had already lost my anxiety about marriage and my obsession with finding someone. So, I thought I was just there to help my subordinate find someone.
What are your hobbies? You've been smiling but haven't talked much since you got here, right?
Huh? He spoke to me while I was nodding along to everyone's conversation. Did he realize I wasn't looking for a date?
I like driving. It clears my mind when I'm feeling down. What about you? Oh, well, I enjoy visiting cafes. I love reading, so I bring a book along.
As I spoke, I suddenly felt embarrassed, thinking my hobby was too plain. He wasn't handsome, but he was stylish, cheerful, and seemed popular.
Really? I also visit various cafes while driving. Ones with ocean views, in the woods, or with history. Huh? Maybe I like visiting cafes too. Yes, you seem to know many wonderful cafes. If you'd like, let's go together next time. I want to show you all my favorite cafes.
After that, we started going on drives and visiting cafes together. Since he worked in sales, he was good with people, had many stories, and was very enjoyable to be around. On our third date, Joseph told me he would soon leave his printing job to work at the company his parents ran.
My dad runs a metalworking factory. I've been avoiding it because I didn't want to do that kind of work, but my mom passed away 2 years ago. I finally decided I should take over. I see, that's commendable. I'm sure your dad was happy.
Joseph nodded, blushing, then straightened up.
Well, after a few dates, I was drawn to your modesty and kindness, Victoria. Would you consider dating me with marriage in mind?
I didn't hesitate to respond to him, who confessed seriously and formally.
Yes, if you don't mind me.
Joseph's shy expression and small yay were very cute. Even after we started dating, Joseph was a perfect gentleman, always making sure to bring me home at a reasonable hour so his parents wouldn't worry. Even before introducing me, his parents seemed at ease, and our relationship was going smoothly. When we visited his parents' house, his father, Matthew, welcomed me warmly. Joseph had never brought a girlfriend home before, so they had been worried. Soon, when we visited his parents' house, I began cooking dinner for the three of us.
I'm working on a garden shelf for a friend. Really? His factory can make those? How about this? Just an idea.
Even without Joseph, Matthew and I enjoyed brainstorming fun products that could be made in the factory. I had always loved craft and technical classes where we made things. Matthew was always thinking about the possibilities for the factory and never hesitated to try new things.
If you marry Joseph, you should work at our company too, Victoria. Wouldn't it be fun to create something together? Besides, Joseph is still learning the ropes, so I'd like you to support him closely. Hey, Dad. I haven't even proposed yet, don't get ahead of yourself. Well, if Victoria becomes Joseph's wife, I'd be thrilled. It's rare to find someone so wonderful.
With his encouragement, we happily became husband and wife a year later. Joseph wanted our wedding to be a destination wedding, so we combined it with our honeymoon. Matthew and my family also attended, and it was a truly happy time. After getting married, I started working as a clerk at the factory, and the three of us supported the family business together.
Victoria, I heard you're working on something interesting with the CEO? I'm studying how to introduce the factory's uniqueness on social media. A reliable project manager, right?
Both William, the senior managing director, and the factory workers adored me, and the office was always filled with smiles. I'm genuinely happy I got married. I really feel that way from the bottom of my heart. However, I was always concerned that Joseph rarely came to the office, possibly due to the workload. After our marriage, we looked for a new house near his father's home. Initially, I had considered living with Matthew, but Joseph had different ideas.
Dad is still healthy, so let's live together for at least the first year.
Unexpectedly, I was thrilled by his suggestion. I thought we were such a good match. But reality wasn't as sweet as I imagined. When Joseph came home from work, he was always grumpy. Initially, it was just clicking his tongue and sighing, but then he started saying things like,
I'm tired. You get to come home early, so at least have dinner ready by the time I get back.
As time went by, he began complaining and making snide remarks to me. Sorry, I went grocery shopping today, so dinner was delayed. But I'm tired too, you know.
Don't compare my job with your desk job. You're a woman, it's your duty to handle everything at home, even if you work.
They say a man who is overly controlled by his wife is henpecked. But it was clear he was under a lot of stress from work. Joseph was learning all aspects of the business, starting by working alongside factory workers.
Damn it! That guy yelled at me for a minor mistake. When I'm the CEO, I'll fire him immediately. Yeah, it must be tough to be yelled at despite your hard work. Why don't you come to the office to chat? It might cheer you up. What? You don't understand. Don't act like you do.
Having been training to become CEO for about a year and a half, Joseph was still learning and was frequently scolded by the factory workers. If we had lived with Matthew, he might not have been able to relieve his stress at home. I felt that our current living arrangement was good for him. I'm sorry for taking my anger out on you every day, Victoria. Thank you for always listening to my complaints. On weekends, Joseph would apologize as if returning to his senses and take me on drives and cafe visits like before we were married. Knowing he trusted me enough to show his true self made it easier to bear. I sincerely thought I would be Joseph's outlet for stress until he got used to work. But that might have been a mistake. His verbal abuse escalated more and more after that. Nearly a year into our marriage, just as Joseph was getting the hang of his job, I found out I was pregnant. Matthew was overjoyed and cried tears of happiness. Joseph was happy too, but his constant mention of wanting a boy worried me.
I hope it's a boy. It would secure the company's future. Either way, Matthew will be thrilled.
I also prayed that Joseph's wish would come true, but I felt uneasy about what would happen if we had a girl. Fortunately, I didn't have severe morning sickness and planned to work until just before giving birth. When I was in my final month of pregnancy, Matthew said something to me when we were alone in the office.
Victoria, thank you for marrying Joseph. Given the circumstances, I should tell you now that while Joseph has a good outward appearance, he struggles to form deep relationships with people. I hope you'll continue to support him through his shortcomings. Yes, of course. If Victoria can take care of both the company and the household, everything will be fine. Please take care of Joseph and the company.
With a new life on the way, Matthew might have been thinking about passing the baton to the next generation. I felt happy to have Matthew's trust. His factory was becoming an important place for me too. And then, a little girl was born a bit earlier than expected. Victoria, thank you. Thank you for giving me a beautiful granddaughter. Really, thank you. Matthew rushed over right after the birth and thanked me over and over. Seeing how happy he was about Grace's birth made me tear up too. Seeing Matthew so emotional, Joseph didn't complain about having a girl, and I was deeply relieved. However, after Grace was born, Joseph started going out for drinks after work. At first, he said,
"The crying is too loud. I can't relax at home."
But after I returned to work post-maternity leave, his excuse changed.
"I'm tired of seeing the same face at home and at work."
Gradually, he started drinking more often and coming home later. Despite going out without notice, he would make derogatory comments if he came home and found no dinner.
"You've got it easy. You just take care of the kid and don't even bother to prepare my dinner. You could have told me then. I thought you were eating out today too. I'll prepare it right away, just wait a bit."
Recently, he had been venting his frustrations about me rather than his work. It probably had something to do with Grace being a girl.
"You're useless at work too, just getting paid to answer phones. If you were at least pretty, maybe we'd have more clients. But you're ugly too."
Hey. I am working properly, so stop saying things like that. Don't you get it?
An ugly, plain woman like you is a nuisance to society. At least serve me like your life depends on it since I married you, you useless woman who can only bear daughters.
What I once thought was just Joseph being henpecked had now turned into full-blown moral harassment. Maybe he was upset that I got along well not only with Matthew and the factory workers but also with William, the senior managing director. William was someone Matthew trusted so much that he introduced him to others as my partner. Matthew was hands-on at the factory, so William handled all external relations by himself.
I want an easy job like William's. I don't need to learn dirty work, I could start in sales right away. I want to become CEO soon.
All I could do was sigh. I used to find Joseph attractive when he worked in sales before we got married, but now I realized he looked down on it so much. Despite being the next CEO, he thought he could manage without understanding the business. I believed everything would be fine as long as Matthew was around, and I hoped Joseph would eventually change. The winter when Grace turned 2 years old. Matthew died suddenly of a heart attack. Just the day before, he had been healthy enough to take his daily walk with Grace. Joseph went to check on him when he didn't show up for work in the morning and found him collapsed under his bed. They called an ambulance, but it was too late. He passed away at the hospital. Why did it have to be so soon? It was such a shock, and Joseph and I were busy until the funeral was over. When I finally cried at the send-off, Grace gently stroked my forehead. Holding Grace, I didn't know how to explain her beloved grandpa's passing, and I cried again. His death was a shock to me in many ways. Time passed, and Joseph had been the CEO for a while. Then Joseph said something outrageous.
Hey, now that I'm CEO, you're going to quit the company. What? Why?
Why? Are you really that stupid?
We can't pay someone who doesn't contribute anything. From now on, your job is taking care of the house and raising our child.
He fired me.
Be grateful you married me. You're still the CEO's wife. And don't worry about the clerk position. I've hired a beautiful woman to replace you.
Joseph said with a lecherous smile, and I was dumbfounded. I suspected the new clerk was his lover, Mila. We might be over. For the first time, I considered divorce. Since becoming the CEO's wife, our household finances had worsened. We used to split the living expenses 60-40, but even as a housewife, that ratio didn't change.
We can't live like this. If you want me to focus on housework, you need to pay all the living expenses. If not, let's get divorced. What? Who do you think you're talking to? I'll decide if we divorce. Not you, useless woman. And,
seeing Joseph's lecherous smile, I had a bad feeling.
If we divorce, I'll take custody of Grace. A fool like you can't raise her, and I can find a replacement for you any time.
Knowing Joseph, who wanted to control me, he might really do it out of spite. I couldn't let Grace be taken away for such a reason. Joseph, who had told Grace she was noisy from birth, pushed her away when she reached out to him in a bad mood. I was always anxious, wondering if he would harm Grace someday. Don't you get it?
An ugly, plain woman like you is a nuisance to society. At least serve me like your life depends on it.
Holding back tears of frustration, I clenched my fists and asked Joseph again.
Then please provide for us properly.
Grace is already 3.
If needed, get a job.
If anyone will hire you, that is. Feeling triumphant after arguing with me, Joseph laughed loudly.
I spend more on living expenses even though you're home more.
Be grateful. Biting my lip, I could only nod silently. To protect Grace and stay with her, I decided to work and earn money. After Joseph went to sleep, I decided to call my mom. I needed to talk to someone to sort out my confused feelings. Mom was probably sleepy from the late-night call, but she listened, and thanks to her, I was finally able to sleep. The next day, Mom called me.
Can you come over this Sunday? I have something to talk about.
I didn't know what it was about, but staying at home was too painful, so I decided to take Grace and visit my parents' house for the weekend. Joseph had texted me saying, I'm staying at Mila's place this weekend, so there shouldn't be any issues. Since declaring he was firing me, Joseph had stopped hiding his affair.
I made you the CEO's wife, so don't complain.
That seemed to be his reasoning. I had heard rumors from the factory workers about his infidelities at the pub, but I never imagined he would hire his lover as a clerk. When I arrived at my parents' house with Grace, my parents, my brother Daniel, and my uncle Benjamin were waiting in the living room.
Welcome home. I heard you're looking for a job. Would you like to work part-time at my company? You can set your own hours. What? Really?
I couldn't help but burst into tears at the unexpected offer. It had been so long since I felt someone's kindness, and it warmed my heart. Benjamin ran his own business. He and his wife, Harper, didn't have children, and they had always doted on us since we were kids. Even as an adult, Harper and I often went shopping or had lunch together.
Did you know Joseph's company is one of our clients? It's been tough since the previous CEO passed away.
I knew they were a client, but I haven't mentioned it. I don't know much about the company since Matthew died. Daniel was learning the ropes as the next potential CEO of Benjamin's company. That's where I heard shocking news. After Matthew died and Joseph became CEO, employees who opposed his policies started leaving, and new hires weren't staying long either, leading to fewer orders.
Since it's a company related to you, and we've had a long relationship with the former CEO, we want to support them, but if the quality drops, we might have to reconsider.
I see. I have a favor to ask of you both. I asked him to keep my job at his company a secret from Joseph. I would speak to William, who managed client relations, but I also asked Benjamin to keep quiet. I didn't want Joseph mocking me for getting the job through connections or using Benjamin for leverage. Most importantly, I wanted to keep it as a last resort. After I started working at Benjamin's company, Joseph stopped contributing money to the household.
I told you to handle the house. Now that you're working, you can handle the household expenses too.
Joseph seemed to enjoy seeing my despair, wearing a smug smile. He was splitting his time between our house and Mila's, clearly spending money on her. I'll pay the rent, so don't worry. Despite my anger, I couldn't say anything back. All I could do was plan for a divorce, documenting Joseph's words and actions in a journal. I also started following Joseph after work and taking pictures of him with Mila as evidence of the affair. Nearly a year into working at Benjamin's company, an opportunity arose. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard heavy footsteps coming from the entrance.
Hey! Mila's pregnant. She seemed to have a boy.
Excited, Joseph thrust the divorce papers in front of me. Joseph had always wanted a male heir. Even so, I was shocked he had gotten Mila pregnant.
If Grace were a boy, I would have kept you as my trophy wife. But sorry, you're no longer needed.
Take Grace and leave.
What? Are you abandoning Grace too?
Don't put it that way. I'll pay child support. Take good care of her. I couldn't help but cry tears of relief. Finally, I could escape this life. I see. Feigning sadness, I signed the divorce papers. Joseph looked satisfied, thinking everything was going his way. Seeing his face, long-suppressed emotions surged within me. Don't think you'll have a happy future. We agreed to discuss alimony and child support in court, and I kept the signed divorce papers. I immediately called Mom, and the next day I left with Grace. 10 days later, we were to discuss alimony and child support with Joseph at my parents' house. Joseph brought Mila to the meeting. I'm sorry, I couldn't make you happy. I'll pay the standard amount for my infidelity. Joseph, ever the smooth talker, apologized to me and my parents, agreeing to alimony and child support. This is Mila, whom I plan to marry. She's now over 15 weeks pregnant. Since we run a business, we really wanted a boy. Victoria, I'm really sorry.
I ended up getting pregnant with a boy, so we had to ask you to leave.
I was utterly disgusted by Joseph's lecherous grin and Mila's smug expression. Mila, at 25, was a beautiful, voluptuous woman but had a calculating look. How could people who enjoy looking down on others even exist?
So, you'll pay $400 monthly in child support and $50,000 in alimony in one lump sum, right?
Yes.
I want to start my new life with Mila soon. But first, I need to get a notarized divorce agreement.
Is that okay? Joseph probably wanted to restrict Grace's involvement for the sake of his child with Mila. But that actually worked in my favor. I didn't want them relying on Grace in the future.
Fine. We'll submit the divorce papers after the notarized agreement is ready.
The discussion ended more smoothly than I expected, and I couldn't stop laughing.
Finally, it's all cleared up. What's next for you? Sorry, but it's not over yet. Joseph is going to experience hell from now on.
We created the notarized agreement and signed it, both of us satisfied with the terms. After confirming the alimony payment from Joseph had been transferred, I promptly filed the divorce papers. Joseph was in such a hurry to remarry that it took less than 2 months to finalize everything. On the day the alimony payment was transferred, I called him.
I've confirmed the transfer.
Thank you.
It must be tough ahead, but good luck. Well, unlike me, you're competent, so you'll be fine. Huh? What are you talking about?
His voice sounded puzzled by my sarcastic tone.
Your company is losing employees, right? Factory workers are quitting, and new hires aren't staying long. I hear your sales are dropping too. Did William tell you that?
His voice dropped to a low, threatening tone. But with the divorce papers filed, I no longer needed to fear that voice. No.
My workplace is your company's major client. What? So what? What can a part-time worker like you do about it? Are you stupid? That's why I've always told you you're useless, but you still don't get it?
He laughed, continuing to hurl insults at me. I waited for his laughter to die down before dropping the bombshell. I work at Benjamin's company now.
What?
Joseph fell silent. He was either processing it at lightning speed or his mind had stopped.
They kept the contract out of respect for me as your wife, but now that we're divorced, they have no such obligation. Good luck securing new contracts.
After Matthew passed away, Joseph's arrogant attitude towards clients had led to fewer orders. Still, the major client, Benjamin's company, had kept them afloat.
Wait a minute. Benjamin? But the CEO, there is a woman.
Even over the phone, I could sense Joseph's panic, and it amused me. Yes. Harper took over from the previous CEO. Benjamin is the executive vice president and her partner. They're a couple I admire.
No way! You never mentioned this before. If you had, I wouldn't have divorced you.
Now it was my turn to laugh. No way. I wanted to divorce you. That's why I didn't tell you. To protect Grace.
As per the notarized agreement, stay away from her from now on.
That's not fair.
Oh, by the way, Daniel is expected to be the next CEO. When that happens, there's no way he'll renew your contract.
There was silence on the other end. Not a word, not even a breath.
Please, I did my job well. Can't you speak to the CEO for me? We were married, after all.
No, we're strangers now.
You mistreated the employees, the orders dropped, and the product quality declined. It's all your fault. If Matthew saw the current situation, he'd be in tears.
Oh.
Also, William said he's planning to resign. Without him, you're truly finished.
I hung up without waiting for his response. He called me several times afterward, but I never answered. Daniel is just a candidate for the next CEO, not guaranteed, but I kept that to myself. I didn't expect it to end there, but a few days later, Joseph and Mila showed up at my parents' house. Of course, I wasn't going to let Joseph see Grace, so I spoke to him through the chain-locked door.
Victoria, Please. Speak to the CEO. We received a notice of contract termination yesterday.
I know.
After that, everyone except William handed in their resignation, didn't they?
Joseph, looking restless, scratched his head.
Please, come back. I realize now I need you. Let's start over. I can't face Dad in the afterlife like this.
Huh. How could he say such things in front of his new wife? Mila looked at Joseph with a bitter expression. They must have discussed this before coming here. Having won Joseph over and becoming the CEO's wife, she hadn't anticipated having to beg his ex-wife for help due to the failing business. I refuse. You said I was useless, stupid, and incompetent. And now you expect me to help? No way. Besides, I don't need a morally abusive man like you. I decided to press my advantage. And don't forget our agreement. You said we'd never contact each other after the divorce. What was the penalty again? Joseph's face turned pale. He had boasted. A $10,000 fine every time you come to see me. He had thought it would only inconvenience me. Finally, I decided to drop another bombshell. Oh, Mila. I almost forgot. I'll be sending you a bill for resolving your infidelity. Expect a call from my lawyer. Joseph won't be able to pay, so you'll need to take responsibility. What? The divorce is finalized, it's over. I never said I wouldn't bill you. I just prioritized finalizing the divorce first. Joseph never told me not to. Joseph's face was ashen, but I didn't care. Seeing him suffer from his own decisions was too entertaining. Please, don't. I'm about to give birth. The company's about to go under. What do I do? This wasn't part of the plan. I don't know. That's your problem. But remember, every visit adds to your debt. So don't come here again. You've got an important heir on the way, so good luck. I smiled and closed the door. I could still hear Mila shouting, but eventually, Joseph's consoling voice and her sobs faded away. Afterward, his company fell into severe financial trouble as major clients canceled contracts. I thought the company would go under, but in the end, Joseph decided to sell his shares and step down as CEO to keep the company afloat. It was probably the least he could do to atone to Matthew. William became the new CEO and renegotiated the contract with Benjamin's company. Former factory workers who had quit were rehired, and the factory regained its vibrancy. With William at the helm, even clients who had left started coming back. Joseph and Mila divorced shortly after. Joseph's constant verbal abuse and moral harassment must have driven her away. William told me that she left the house before giving birth. Mila's parents paid the settlement I demanded, and I received an apology letter from them. They seemed like good parents, so I hoped they'd take good care of the unborn child. Joseph, left alone, sold his parents' home and moved to another town. He used Matthew's inheritance to pay my alimony, but with the settlement for moral harassment against Mila and child support payments, he might be penniless now. I don't know, and I don't want to know, but the regular child support payments suggest he's alive and working somewhere. It's pathetic that even though his long-desired son was born, he turned out to be such a disappointment. About a year after the divorce, William approached me. Would you consider returning to the company? Matthew's dream-filled factory needs you, Victoria. I decided to return as a clerk to the company that upheld Matthew's values. The employees welcomed me warmly, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Matthew always talked about the potential the factory held. We started new initiatives, like developing original products and catering to individual customer requests. The factory regained the lively atmosphere it had when Matthew was alive. I joined the factory workers in brainstorming ideas and participated in new project planning.
Mom, I made cookies with Grandma.
6-year-old Grace handed me the homemade treats when I returned from work.
Thank you. They're delicious.
I was truly glad I could protect Grace's smile. I am determined to continue this happy life with her. A faint knock echoed from the front door. I wouldn't have heard it if I'd been in the living room. It was only because I happened to be in the hallway that I caught the sound. Another knock. Through the thick, frosted glass, I could make out a small figure. What was happening? Who was on the other side of the door? Before my mind could process it, my body was already moving. I gently opened the door to find my granddaughter, Amanda, her lips ghostly pale.
What's wrong?
Are you okay? I asked, and she nodded slightly between chattering teeth. As I tried to embrace her for warmth, her body felt so cold it seemed to chill me to the core. No wonder, the weather forecast had said today would be the coldest day of the winter so far. I had a million questions. But first I needed to help Amanda, who was barely breathing.
Robert! Boil some water, quick! I shouted, and Amanda spoke in a small voice.
Mom is Granny. I need to tell you.
Let's get you warmed up first, Amanda. You can tell me once you've settled down.
If Amanda knew the way to the apartment, then our daughter Melissa must still be there. We had to go and help her as soon as possible.
Amanda, do you know the place? Robert is getting the car ready, so...
Amanda stared out at the yard, her eyes brimming with tears that spilled down her cheeks in large droplets. Never mind. Mom is gone now too. She stood up unsteadily, staggering towards the front door. What did she mean, gone?
Wait, Amanda! What happened?
I had no idea what was going on. What had she sensed? The flower all fell and gone. That means Mom is gone too. Her face was etched with despair. A single camellia blossom from the yard had dropped onto the snow. It was the same moment that Buddy, our golden retriever, had taken his last breath. It wasn't illness, but a peaceful, natural death. My granddaughter Amanda wept uncontrollably. For us too, Buddy had been a cherished part of the family for 10 years, so the grief cut deep. Buddy was smart and had been very close with Amanda. They were like true siblings. So I couldn't tell her to stop crying now. You can't say something like that to a 4-year-old in the first place. Amanda apparently cried nonstop for the next 3 days. A year passed since Buddy's death, and Amanda turned 5. Robert, now retired, was at a loose end and threw himself into cooking. Perhaps thanks to his efforts, I too have more free time and can spend relaxing days. Our daughter Melissa still often brings Amanda to visit us at the family home. I'm struck by how much Amanda has grown. When the two of them visit, Robert enthusiastically whips up meals. He absolutely adores seeing Amanda's delighted face, he says. He's completely smitten with his granddaughter. However, there was one thing that worried Robert and me. Kevin, how's he doing these days?
Yeah, he's fine. Anyway.
Once again, she brushed off the question with a transparent excuse. The reason Robert deliberately asked about Kevin was that Melissa's husband never accompanied them on visits. And Melissa would react with fierce rejection whenever the topic came up. Living in our own peaceful bubble, I couldn't help but worry about our daughter's home life. Could they be experiencing some kind of harassment? Strangely, once that thought took hold, the flood of negative speculations and premonitions became unstoppable. There are no visible wounds or bruises, but could it be violence? The doubts accumulated gradually, like the snow that fell last winter. Then one evening, While cleaning up the kitchen he had used, Robert casually brought up an idea.
Hey, next time Melissa and Amanda visit, how about I take Amanda out to play, and Stephanie, you can try talking to Melissa while we're gone.
Robert was the first to suggest investigating. Amanda, who adores her grandpa, would gladly go out with him without any suspicion. With both father and daughter absent, leaving two mothers in similar positions alone together, Melissa might feel more inclined to open up. If she still stubbornly refused to talk even after going to such lengths, then there must be some unsavory circumstances she's hiding. It was an ingenious plan. Got it. I'll leave Amanda to you then. A few days later.
Amanda, want to go out just the two of us? I want to go. Mom, can I?
Is that okay, Dad?
Yeah, you two take it easy for a change.
All right.
Well then, I'll leave her in your care. Amanda, be on your best behavior, okay? I will.
Stage 1 of the operation passed without a hitch. Granted, Melissa showed a hint of suspicion at the sudden proposal but seemed unable to find a reason to refuse.
Melissa, is there something you want to talk about?
I poured 2 cups of instant coffee and set them on the table. Cutting straight to the chase, I asked bluntly.
So that's why you took Amanda out? Well, I appreciate it anyway.
Melissa appeared somewhat resigned. Or perhaps exhausted. After a brief pause, Melissa's complexion changed drastically as if she had aged a decade in an instant. I couldn't help but exclaim.
What happened? I really didn't want to talk about it, but...
Melissa had married a man named Kevin 8 years ago. They were introduced by a mutual friend. When he came to the family meeting, he made a good impression, and the two seemed to get along very well, which put my mind at ease. Until they had a child, both worked to support their small household. They were so busy that they rarely showed their faces at our home. That began to change after their daughter Amanda was born. Melissa quit her job to become a housewife and focus on childcare, but apparently, that was the catalyst for his attitude to deteriorate day by day. It started with complaints about her leaving her job, but now it has escalated into increasingly harsh and scathing verbal abuse. From what I heard, it's not hard to imagine he seems on the verge of becoming physically violent.
Changing for the worse after marriage.
It's a story I've heard of happening occasionally. But it seems that wasn't the case for our daughter and son-in-law. It undoubtedly began after Amanda was born. However, he has never harmed Amanda in any way and appears to be a normal father in that regard.
He won't even tell me what he's so dissatisfied with, so I have no idea. Being in that house makes me think about those things. That's why I've been coming here more often.
I felt my heart crushed with misery. Why couldn't I see it? Why did Melissa have to endure such pain? The surging emotions choked my throat. No matter how much I thought about what to say, I remained trapped. Only when I took Melissa's hand could I finally speak.
Thank you for telling me. It's going to be okay. We're here for you. When you go back today, pack your things right away and come to our house, both of you. You don't have to force yourself to stay with him. But I can't prepare the money right away. We have some savings, so that can come later. The priority now is to get you away from him.
As I said that, Melissa shed a single large tear.
Welcome back, Amanda. Robert, did you get lost? We were fine.
I wondered if Amanda was aware of the situation. Now, and even before, it didn't seem that way, but this child has a brave and resilient personality. So perhaps she's putting on an act to avoid worrying us. Maybe she's just pretending to be okay. What a terrible story. But that's all the more reason we have to act now. I couldn't allow my precious daughter and granddaughter to be exposed to such fierce storms any longer. After sending Melissa and Amanda home, I explained the situation to Robert, and he nodded, saying, "That's the best thing to do." He was so furious that he looked ready to rush over and beat Kevin up right then and there, but I managed to calm him down.
I don't know what he's thinking, pulling this nonsense.
However, the two of them never showed up, no matter how long we waited. As 2 hours, then 3 hours passed, my anxiety grew ever stronger. Melissa and her husband live in the same state as us, and while it's a bit far, it's not an impossible distance to walk. It certainly doesn't take 2 hours of walking. Could they be out shopping before coming to stay with us? Even so, there's no word from them. Finally reaching my limit, I tried calling, but no matter how many times it rang, the call never connected.
Wait here, I'll go check on them first. If it was going to turn out like this, I should have driven them.
15 minutes after driving off, Robert, who had said those words, called me.
"Stephanie, contact the police. There's no one in this house."
Did he realize something, or had he been planning this all along? To this day, I don't know, but Kevin disappeared somewhere, taking his wife Melissa and daughter Amanda with him.
Robert, I've told you many times. The police can't investigate for something like moving without notice. We'll do what we can, so please go home for now.
I thought the police refusing to act in situations like this was something that only happened in fiction. I never imagined we'd actually be dismissed.
Come on, detective, I'm begging you. This is clearly a missing persons case. My daughter and granddaughter have been kidnapped. What else could it be but a crime? With the evidence being just one complaint, there's nothing we can do. I'm not saying we won't do anything. We'll do what we can.
I could vaguely sense that saying anything more would be futile. And I couldn't say they were completely neglecting us. "Robert, let's go home. There are other ways. If the state won't act, then we'll get individuals to act." It's not that I don't feel any frustration, but I could somewhat understand what they were saying.
Indeed, it doesn't seem like the police will act with just that. I'll pay. You'll find them, won't you? Yes, it's our duty. We'll gladly lend you our assistance. Now, can you tell us the details?
While I didn't want to believe the police wouldn't act at all, I also didn't think they'd fully commit, so as a last resort, we turned to private investigators. Fortunately, they were very positive and asked for various pieces of information. I explained in detail the little I had heard from Melissa that day. That said, there was only so much I could tell them. After all, as the police had said, I too had only heard a single complaint. Then, a month passed without any developments. Winter had truly set in, and some days even brought snow. Were Melissa and Amanda safe? The winter we spent unable to even know that much was colder than any winter before. On a day when snow quietly fell from gloomy clouds. No matter what I did, I couldn't focus, but doing nothing was just as unsettling. As I restlessly cleaned the house, I felt as if something was calling to me and paused for a moment. Knock knock. I surely wouldn't have heard it if I'd been in the living room. It was only because I happened to be cleaning the hallway that I caught the faint knocking at the front door. Knock. Through the thick frosted glass, I could see a small figure. What was happening? Who was on the other side of the door? Before my mind could understand, my body was moving. Gently opening the door so as not to knock over the small shadow, there stood Amanda, her lips ghostly pale.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
Amid the chattering of her trembling teeth, Amanda gave a small nod. Cold. I need heat. When I embraced her to warm her up, Amanda's body was so cold it felt like it would chill me to the core. No wonder, the weather forecast said today would be the coldest day of the winter so far.
Robert, bring some towels and blankets.
I had a million questions. But before that, I had to save Amanda, who was barely breathing.
And boil some water too. Got it.
Mom is. Granny, Amanda, I'll tell you.
First things first, Amanda. Tell me once you've properly warmed up.
I brought Amanda right in front of the stove and wrapped her in a blanket. Looking outside from the living room, I could see snow starting to accumulate in the yard.
Feeling a bit warmer?
Yeah. But Mom is.
Can you talk? Will you tell me?
Amanda began speaking in fragments. According to her, when they got home that day a month ago, Kevin was already there. He then forcibly took them to a room in a different apartment, not their own home, and kept the two of them confined there. It was somewhere in the state. And Amanda had memorized the route from there to our house during walks with Buddy, which is how she managed to make it here. What a clever, brave child. No, this isn't the time to be impressed. If Amanda knows the way to the apartment in question, she must still be there. We have to hurry and rescue her.
Amanda, do you know the place? Robert is getting the car ready now, so.
Amanda stared out at the yard. Large tears overflowed from her eyes. Never mind. Mom is gone now too. Amanda stood up unsteadily, staggering towards the front door with faltering steps. What did she mean by gone?
Wait, Amanda! What's wrong?
Lashing myself for being dumbfounded, I sprang up and forcefully caught Amanda in an embrace. But I had no idea what was going on. What on earth had she sensed? All the flour is gone, so Mom is gone too. Amanda's face was etched with despair. I somehow got the sobbing Amanda into the car and reluctantly asked her for directions. Right now, she is the only person who knows Melissa's whereabouts. Feeling impatient, I slowly drove the car for over 30 minutes to get directions from her. She had walked this distance all alone, so the terror she must have felt is immeasurable. Here. Amanda pointed with swollen eyes. What lay ahead was a terribly run-down apartment complex.
Wait here, I'll go check.
Robert leapt out of the car, a deck brush in one hand as a precautionary means of self-defense. Left in the car, all I could do was hold Amanda and try to calm her. Less than 5 minutes later, there was a rough bang. Wondering what happened, I looked at a room in the old apartment and saw that Robert had apparently slammed the front door, and in his arms was Melissa's limp form. I hurriedly opened the rear door.
Mom! Melissa! It's okay, Amanda. She still has a pulse. But she's unconscious. I've already called the ambulance, so for now we have to warm her up.
The car's heater was cranked up excessively. While not as much as Amanda had been a short while ago, Melissa was also thoroughly chilled. She seemed to be gradually recovering, but it was still worrying. 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived, and I felt the tiniest bit of relief. While Robert explained the situation to one of the paramedics, the others carried Melissa into the ambulance. That's when it hit me. Amanda had been in the same place this whole time too.
Please examine this child too. She was in the same place until just now.
I can't drive, so I got into the ambulance to accompany the two of them. Robert followed behind the ambulance in the car. The next day, with the situation taking a major turn and actual harm done, the police finally got off their asses. At this point, Kevin became a suspect in a kidnapping and confinement case, officially pursued by the police. At first I felt anger at their inflexibility, which eventually turned to exasperation, but seeing them act at this stage made my anger surge again. In any case, once they get moving, it's only a matter of time before the truth comes to light. Melissa is still unconscious, but her condition itself seems stable. Amanda was also hospitalized for malnutrition and is currently on the road to recovery. But the psychological damage inflicted on her young mind is immeasurable. I tried contacting Kevin again, but it was completely impossible to reach him. It's only natural. According to Robert, the room was empty except for several boxes, a small table, an old heater, a dirty blanket, and a few other items. It was utterly lacking in the necessities for human habitation. And yet, my daughter and granddaughter had spent a whole month there. What was he thinking, suddenly disappearing with his wife and child, only for him to be absent from the scene? The police said there were only traces of 2 people living in that old apartment room. And even that was below the bare minimum, especially regarding meals. They likely didn't have enough to eat properly. In other words, Kevin had disappeared with the intention of confining the 2 of them in the old apartment for some reason from the start, while he himself observed from somewhere without getting involved. Regardless of his true intentions, he was the lowest of the low. 2 days after finding Melissa, she somehow regained consciousness. She still seems to have difficulty moving on her own, but she's recovered enough to sit and talk. Finally, we may see some light shed on the full picture of this incident.
Can you tell me what happened that day?
At first, she remained silent, but after a short pause, she began speaking hesitantly.
When I got home, he was waiting. He took my smartphone and wallet. Then I was put in the car and taken to that apartment.
After cutting off her means of external communication, he pressured her to work. The intensity of his actions at that time was so overwhelming that it made her chest tighten just recalling it. However, the only work that could be done in such a place was a side job at best, and even the meager income she earned was mostly taken from her.
Why didn't you escape? If you had wanted to, you could have left that place any time.
In fact, Amanda had somehow managed to escape to our house when she saw an opening, though we still don't know the details. It was a place with absolutely no security.
Of course, it's not that I didn't think about it. But he made it clear, like driving a nail. It's pointless to run, and if you do, I won't show mercy. So, when I thought about something happening to Amanda, I couldn't move.
There seemed to be no direct violence, but the fact that he had taken away their freedom and even threatened them made it decisively a crime.
How could he? Do you have any idea why?
To be honest, it pained me. This was like asking if Melissa had even the slightest reason for what happened. But I didn't know what else to ask. Yes, there were so many things I didn't understand about the whole situation.
His attitude changed around the time I quit my job to focus on childcare, so considering that, I can only think he really wanted me to work. It's okay. You did nothing wrong.
It seems difficult to determine the cause. Then we have no choice but to investigate his true intentions by other means.
So, do you know where he is? The police are apparently looking for him too, but they don't seem to have any leads so far. It's embarrassing to say, but we don't have much in savings, so I don't think he's at a hotel or anything like that. If he's not at home, he might be crashing at a friend's place.
My instincts told me this would be important testimony.
Got it. I'll tell the police and private investigator later. And the day before yesterday, Amanda said you had passed away. I'm glad it wasn't a serious illness, but why would Amanda say that? I probably let a cold get out of hand. I haven't been able to stop coughing for a week. We're not eating properly, so things that should heal don't, you know?
Melissa smiled wryly in exasperation. Amanda, how are you feeling? Can you talk to Granny for a bit?
Okay.
How did you get out of that room?
Dad wasn't there. If he's not there, you can get out.
As expected, she is brave. I felt sorry for her, but more than that, I was proud. And there was one more thing I wanted to ask. It wasn't directly related to the incident, but it was something I was personally very curious about. Why did you say Mom was gone the day before yesterday? Because the red flower fell. That's how Buddy went away. It seemed this child believed that when a camellia blossom falls, someone dies. Indeed, the way the entire flower falls from the base is distinctive, so even as a child, it's not hard to understand why she would think that, looking back now. Buddy passed away around the end of winter. It was the season when camellias fall. I see. So that's what it was. That's not that kind of flower. It's okay. Mom is alive, right? Yeah. With a small nod, Amanda shed tears again. Without asking why, I embraced her. This time, there was no feeling of freezing.
Grandpa, Granny, thank you for saving Mom.
Not at all. Everything was thanks to her bravery.
No, it's thanks to you, Amanda. I should be thanking you.
3 days after Melissa and Amanda were taken into protective custody, we received news that Kevin had been arrested. I placed a hand on my chest in relief and stroked it. As Melissa had said, he had been hiding out at a friend's house. But while it would be one thing if it were just a friend, apparently that friend was a woman, and the fact that they had an inappropriate relationship also came to light at the same time. More importantly, Amanda's health had completely recovered, and she returned to being the cheerful Amanda she used to be. Melissa also recovered steadily without any serious issues. When I told her about Kevin's arrest, the light seemed to return to Melissa's face. Now, there's no need to face that fear anymore. The court issued a restraining order, but that alone isn't enough to feel safe. So my husband and I, along with Melissa and Amanda, moved to the suburbs away from the city center. It's been almost 6 months now. And as another big change, we decided to take in a new red-haired golden retriever. Amanda named him Teddy. It seems she couldn't forget about Buddy after all. Amidst the lush greenery, the sister and brother, one human and one dog, run around energetically in the yard that has doubled in size. Fortunately, Teddy's personality is just like Buddy's, who could be called his predecessor, and he's very attached to Amanda. It's such a heartwarming sight that I almost let out a sigh without thinking.
I'm home. I'm home.
As dusk approached, Robert and Melissa returned from the courthouse. With the siblings playing in the yard out of the corner of my eye, I was finally able to hear the details from the two of them. The crimes Kevin was charged with were mainly false imprisonment, coercion, and abandonment of a person in one's care, and he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. To be honest, considering all the things he did, I felt that wasn't enough. I even wish he would never come out. The reason he forced Melissa to work was simply because he wanted to take it easy himself. For such a trivial reason, he plunged his wife and child into terror, utterly lacking any sense of morality or ethics. And my anger was also directed at ourselves for not seeing through him. Regarding the woman who had been sheltering Kevin, the point of contention seems to be whether she was aware of the secrecy, but at least for me, it didn't matter. In any case, we've now moved to a peaceful place surrounded by nature, and the 4 of us plus 1 dog are starting a new life. The wounds we've suffered won't heal so easily. But Amanda plays with Teddy both inside and outside the house, and Melissa is starting to return to her original cheerful personality. Not everything is going smoothly, but I really like this life. When we moved, we brought the camellia tree we had planted in the yard to our current home. It took a lot of effort, But this tree is a commemorative tree for our daughter, so we couldn't make the decision to leave it behind. Now it's the height of summer and there's no sign of it, but when winter comes again, it will surely bloom with beautiful, magnificent flowers. And even if the seasons change and those flowers eventually fall, I'm sure she won't cry anymore. I'm pregnant, so give me $3,000. Laughing mockingly, Sierra extended her hand. I instinctively brushed it away.
There's no way I'm giving you that. And why does it have to be such a high amount?
To my question, Sierra sneered. Cute kids cost money.
You wouldn't understand. That kid's surely going to be cute like Sierra. Unlike someone, she's probably going to be a beauty.
Sierra and Rodney burst into laughter. I felt like my anger was about to explode. I just couldn't bear it anymore. Unintentionally, the words I'd been holding back slipped out.
Actually, about that kid.
As soon as they heard my words, Sierra turned pale, and Rodney looked shocked. Things went a bit differently than planned, but you could say it's a smooth start. But the real revenge starts now. They'll have to pay for what they did to Sis. Let them cry all night after losing everything. Well, that still wouldn't be enough for me. They might as well enjoy themselves for now. Because those smiles will soon fade away. Smiling to myself, I distanced myself from the quarreling Sierra and Rodney. My name is Hannah. I'm 33 and I work in a design office. Talking like this might give off a stylish, urban impression. But the reason I chose this path isn't so simple. To be honest, this was the only choice I had. That's the right way to put it. Actually, I have an older sister named Daisy. Daisy is 2 years older than me and could do anything. Compared to Daisy, who excels in both studies and sports, all I could do was draw. Illustration was the only thing I didn't lose against Sis. That was my only solace. But, don't get me wrong, it's not like I had a bad relationship with Daisy or my parents. My parents loved me equally, and Daisy and I still keep in touch frequently. That's why, when Daisy got divorced 4 years ago, I couldn't hide my shock. Moreover, the reason was Rodney's affair, and the other woman was my best friend, Sierra. Sis. I'm sorry. I'll cut ties with Sierra. The day I declared that to Daisy still haunts my dreams. I'll never forgive Sierra. That's how I still feel inside. By the way, I met Sierra when we were in elementary school. We were the same age and became classmates for the first time in the upper grades. Of course, being in the same grade, we knew each other's names and faces. But we never really had any contact. And that's why we never talked before. I'm Sierra. Nice to meet you. Sierra had a very refined appearance. Her voice was cute, and every gesture was adorable. Being approached by such a cute classmate, I became nervous.
What's wrong?
Well, it's just that you're so much cuter than me.
Me? Really?
Sierra asked, looking back at me. I nodded slightly. In that moment, Sierra hugged me and whispered in my ear with a smile.
I think you're cute too. Be confident.
Really? Yeah. Let's become best friends. And that's how we became best friends. Since then, Sierra was always by my side. When I was talked about behind my back at school, it was Sierra who defended me first.
There are kids saying bad things about Hannah, but let's not do that.
Sierra said confidently in front of our classmates. As expected, the classmates fell silent. The reason I was talked about, in fact, was because of Daisy's presence being known. Initially, many friends would say things like this to me. It's so cool to have a sis who's good at studying. Being the starting player, that's awesome. I was happy when Daisy was praised. It didn't bother me. But, those words of praise for Daisy turned into backhanded comments about me. Her sister is terrible at both studies and sports. Being good at drawing, isn't that kind of lame? Of course, no one would say it to my face. They talked in whispers, hidden in the corners of the classroom. But, of course, I could hear them. However, it was the truth, so I couldn't deny it. It was frustrating, but it was the truth. All I could do was bear it. But, maybe sensing how I felt, Sierra spoke up for me. Moreover, perhaps to prevent the issue from lingering, Sierra didn't single out the culprits. That approach worked well, and the people who talked about me disappeared.
Thank you, Sierra. We're best friends. Of course I got your back.
Our bond grew even stronger. However, I learned the truth about that incident a year ago. It was during a reunion after a long time. A friend told me this story. The bad-mouthing about me was instigated by Sierra. She defended me to gain my trust. Hearing that, I felt like my heart was about to burst with regret. If I had seen through the lie at that time, maybe sis wouldn't have divorced. Since learning that fact a year ago, I've found it even harder to forgive Sierra. Let me say this again, I only found out about this fact a year ago. So until the moment I heard about Daisy's divorce, I always thought of Sierra as my best friend. Even as we grew older, I believed Sierra was my best friend. That's why I accepted everything Sierra said without any doubt. You have a talent for illustration. You should definitely pursue that path.
Really? Do you think so? Go for it.
Sierra encouraged me. Thinking so, I enrolled in a design-focused university. Looking back, it might seem laughable. But back then, I believed Sierra's advice. However, there was one good thing. It was that I truly had a talent for illustration. After enrolling in university, my design talent blossomed, and I landed a job at a design office with top grades. On the other hand, Sierra joined a modeling agency after graduating high school. But she didn't make any spectacular achievements. She appeared in fashion magazines. But only a few times. That marked the end of Sierra's modeling career. Nonetheless, it's undeniable that Sierra was beautiful. As if leveraging her good looks, Sierra switched careers to a major apparel manufacturer. Then she started working as a salesperson at a clothing store the company operated. Being a former model, she indeed boosted the store's sales significantly. Thus, Sierra became a popular salesperson. Hearing the rumors, I visited Sierra. Sierra, you seem to have become quite popular.
Hannah, you came to see me.
Sierra rushed over. Being mindful of the surroundings, I nodded slightly. By the way, how's your job, Hannah? Web design and stuff, pretty challenging, but I guess it's fulfilling.
I see. Then I'll have to work hard too.
I thought she'd be down after quitting modeling, but she seemed just fine. As I was thinking, Sierra leaned in and asked, "So, what are you here to buy today? If it's a new collection, I can help out and choose for you."
No. It's not that. I'm actually looking for a present for sis.
2 years older, right? Is it her birthday or something? Sierra smiled. I replied a bit shyly.
Actually, sis, she's getting married.
Marriage? Congratulations!
Thank you, but I'm not the one getting married. Right. Sorry.
We laughed together. Then I talked about Daisy's marriage. Daisy, who had just turned 28 a few days ago, went out for a meal with her partner Rodney. There, Rodney proposed to Daisy. Of course, Daisy accepted. Having heard the story the day before, I decided to celebrate Daisy's marriage. And after much deliberation, I finally decided to gift Daisy clothes. Considering the upcoming wedding preparations and meetings, Daisy would have more occasions to go out. So, I was wondering if there's any nice outfit. I see. Let me choose for you. Do you have a photo or something of Daisy? Show me. Sierra extended her hand. I sent a photo of Daisy, stored on my mobile phone, to Sierra. It was a picture Daisy had sent me. It probably had been taken during a recent date. The impressive illumination in the background was a hot topic, and it was a photo I particularly liked.
This illumination. It's really popular right now. Yup, exactly. We were talking about going there since everyone's buzzing about it.
I stopped mid-sentence and instinctively clamped my mouth shut. But it seemed too late. Sierra was looking at me with a laugh. Then, putting her hand to her mouth, she asked me,
I heard we were talking about going there. Do you have a boyfriend by any chance?
Well. My ears turned red with embarrassment. Having a boyfriend was a first for me. Sierra, who had been with me since elementary school, knew that. Of course, Sierra seemed happy for me. But all of it was just an act. When Daisy got divorced and I confronted Sierra, she confessed. Moreover, the photo I sent at that time turned out to be the catalyst for Sierra and Rodney's affair. And on top of that, Sierra had already known for a few days that I had a boyfriend. Apparently, Sierra had witnessed me and my boyfriend Denny on a date a few days before. She was plotting to steal Denny from me. This too was a confession from Sierra. In short, if I hadn't brought up Daisy's marriage, Sierra would have tried to take my boyfriend away. Because I showed Rodney's photo to Sierra, sis ended up divorcing. It goes without saying how much I regretted it, even though it was done unknowingly. Nonetheless, oblivious to everything, I presented the clothes chosen by Sierra to Daisy. Daisy was really pleased and even prepared for her wedding wearing that outfit. Looking back now, I believe that was probably the happiest time for Daisy. After a while, Daisy got married, but she gradually became gloomier. Since we both lived alone, we used to contact each other frequently. However, shortly after the marriage, Daisy started to contact me less often.
Maybe she's enjoying her married life?
I thought lightly. Then, unusually, Daisy called me. Rodney might be having an affair. Daisy's voice was terribly somber. I tried to comfort her desperately.
What do you mean? Are you sure it's not a misunderstanding?
I don't think it's a misunderstanding. He's been coming home late, and he's not even home on his days off. Daisy said and finally broke down in tears. In my eyes, Daisy always seemed like a strong person. But that Daisy was crying now. It made it clear to me that she was not okay.
Calm down, sis. Let's get to the bottom of this first.
I proceeded with an investigation into Rodney's conduct. If they could reconcile, that would be best. That's what I thought, but it backfired. The investigation I initiated led Daisy to discover Rodney and Sierra's affair. Hearing that fact, Daisy and I confronted Sierra together.
Sierra, what is this all about?
What?
There's nothing to it. Rodney and I are dating. That's all. But he's Sis's husband. Doesn't that make it an affair?
I confronted Sierra with a strong tone. But Sierra seemed unfazed.
An affair, sure, but what's the problem?
He prefers a beautiful woman, obviously. Sierra glanced at Daisy. Daisy quickly looked down. Indeed, Sierra was more beautiful than Daisy and I. But if you consider what's inside, Sierra is overwhelmingly inferior. At any rate, Sierra, who could cheat without remorse, was much uglier than Daisy. The argument with Sierra escalated, but she remained defiant throughout. Realizing we were getting nowhere, I decided to confront Rodney next. Rodney, too, was just as defiant.
Of course, I prefer beautiful women. When I'm seen with them, everyone envies me.
Rodney, do you really mean that?
Yeah, I mean it.
I prefer beautiful women. But I couldn't bring myself to ask why he married Daisy in the first place.
It's fine. I'll be reporting the affair to both of your companies. What? If you do that, we might lose our jobs. You should have thought of that before you did it.
I said it loudly. Sierra seemed a bit shaken, but Rodney remained nonchalant.
Hannah, you're so naive. An affair won't cost us our jobs. What? Unless it's a crime, an affair is a personal matter. It's a marital issue, so the company won't get involved.
It's true the company might think it's unsightly. But an affair isn't grounds for disciplinary action. I later found out that unless there are specific internal regulations, generally, affairs don't lead to disciplinary action. Sierra laughed triumphantly. And Rodney smirked disgustingly.
Well, that's the situation. The only thing you can do is break up with me.
Rodney said to Daisy. Daisy looked down, seemingly frustrated.
What are you so proud of? That's...
Before I could finish my sentence, Daisy grabbed my arm. In a voice as faint as a mosquito's buzz, Daisy said, "It's okay, Hannah. If I can get away from Rodney, that's enough." In the end, Daisy got a settlement from Rodney through the divorce and left him. After that, Rodney apparently started dating Sierra. But I didn't care. I couldn't forgive Rodney nor Sierra. In place of Daisy, I vowed to seek revenge on the two of them. That was the only thing I was determined about. For years had passed since then. I never forgot about them for a moment.
The stage is set, now, brace yourselves.
On a certain holiday, I made up my mind and headed to a boutique in a bustling district. As I entered the store, I heard a female salesperson's voice. But I ignored it and approached two customers. "It's been a while." "Sierra." When I spoke, the woman turned around.
"What? Hannah."
The surprised shopper was Sierra. Rodney next to her also turned around. "Oh, it's Hannah.
You haven't changed much, or should I say, still unpolished."
I was irritated, but getting angry here would ruin the plan. I kept my cool and continued.
"Both of you seem well. Sierra, have you gained a bit of weight?" "What? No way. I'm pregnant,"
Sierra retorted. This reaction was as expected. This is where the real challenge begins. I braced myself to continue, but before I could speak, Sierra said this. "I'm pregnant, so give me $3,000. Laughing, Sierra extended her hand. I instinctively brushed it away.
"There's no way I'm giving you that. And why does it have to be such a high amount?"
To my question, Sierra sneered. "Cute kids cost money."
"You wouldn't understand. That kid's surely going to be cute like Sierra. Unlike someone, she's probably going to be a beauty."
Sierra and Rodney burst into laughter. I felt like my anger was about to explode. I just couldn't bear it anymore. Unintentionally, the words I'd been holding back slipped out.
Actually, about that kid."
As soon as they heard my words, Sierra turned pale, and Rodney looked shocked. Things went a bit differently than planned, but you could say it's a smooth start. But the real revenge starts now. They'll have to pay for what they did to Sis. Let them cry all night after losing everything. Well, that still wouldn't be enough for me. They might as well enjoy themselves for now. Because those smiles will soon fade away. Smiling to myself, I distanced myself from the quarreling Sierra and Rodney. Then Sierra noticed me distancing myself. Pointing at me, Sierra raised her voice.
"Why would you say such a thing to Rodney? That child isn't Rodney's child. What's that about?"
"Oh? But isn't it true?"
"It's definitely Rodney's child. We got married after all that."
Her loud shout drew the gaze of everyone in the store toward us. I glanced around a bit before stoking the fire further.
"Is that so? Then that child's father is one of your affairs, right?" "But..."
As Sierra tried to retort loudly, Rodney cut in.
"Stop slandering. This child is mine. Are you going to ignore the fact that your wife is cheating, Rodney?"
When I questioned Rodney, his face turned bright red.
"Don't lie without any evidence. You're just trying to stir up trouble." "That's right. Stop messing around."
Sierra also retorted with a flushed face. "It's about time," I thought, looking around.
"Well, causing a scene in the store is troublesome, so let's leave it at that." "What? You started this. You know what? I'll sue you for defamation."
Rodney laughed.
"That's a great idea. We could probably get about $10,000 out of it."
Even Sierra agreed with Rodney's suggestion. I sighed and responded.
"Suit yourselves. But what if I actually have the evidence?" "What? Do you really have evidence of Sierra's affair?"
"Well, who knows?
I'll tell you the answer when we meet next.
Bye for now." With that, I quickly left the store. Behind me, I could hear Rodney's shouting voice.
Hey! Wait! We're not done talking.
I pretended not to hear and quickly moved away from the store. A few hours later, I was at home while changing clothes. My phone rang unexpectedly.
I knew you'd call me.
I answered the phone with a small laugh. Immediately, Rodney's voice rushed in, speaking rapidly.
Hey! About Sierra's affair, is it true? Answer me.
He reacted just as I had anticipated. I couldn't help feeling pleased. Doesn't he realize it's a trap? I sighed softly and responded.
The child in her belly might be yours, but there's also a good chance it belongs to her lover. So, the affair is real?
You're free to think that. I answered provocatively. After a brief silence, Rodney spoke in a low voice.
You have evidence, don't you? If you want, I might even give it to you.
I had directly accused Sierra of having an affair. Meaning, Sierra would now be on guard, making it impossible to gather further evidence of her cheating. So the evidence I might possess becomes Rodney's only hope. He's thinking exactly as I planned. Considering this, Rodney responded.
What should I do? What are your terms? Money?
Of course not.
I just want revenge.
If you leave Sierra, that's enough for me. Needless to say, that was a lie. I have no intention of forgiving Sierra, nor Rodney. But for now, I'll pretend to cooperate with Rodney. Only for the sake of what's to come.
Understood. So I just need to leave Sierra, right? It's simple, isn't it? If you get evidence of Sierra's affair, you'll gain freedom and a settlement from the divorce trial. Yeah. Let's meet and talk somewhere. Then, how about this coming Sunday?
I suggested a restaurant in the entertainment district. It has private rooms, suitable for confidential conversations. After specifying the place, I hung up the phone. Immediately after, Sierra called.
What's the meaning of this, Hannah? Why didn't you answer my call?
I'm busy too. I can't be at your beck and call.
Don't act so high and mighty.
I could hear Sierra grinding her teeth. I almost laughed.
So, what are you going to do about it? Because of you, Rodney and I are fighting. That's not my problem. It's your fault, isn't it?
Sierra is to blame for the affair. That's what I meant to say. But Sierra didn't care about that. She retorted sharply.
When are you going to take responsibility? Or maybe I should really sue you. Is that something a friend would say? Too bad, we're not friends. You said so yourself.
Sierra raised her voice in anger. I distanced the phone slightly. And then responded with a sneer.
Oh right, that's what I said. You're really infuriating. I should have made you cry more when we were in elementary school.
Sierra was breathing heavily. I thought, this is it, and played my trump card.
Oh? In that case, maybe I should just throw this away? The evidence of Rodney's affair. What? Rodney's affair?
Sierra's tone changed. Smirking at her reaction, I continued.
I couldn't find evidence of your affair, but I did get evidence of Rodney's. What do you mean?
Today's incident was a ploy to anger Sierra and make her call me. The real target is Rodney, who betrayed Daisy. I'll give Sierra the evidence of Rodney's affair. So, she can squeeze every penny out of Rodney through the divorce settlement. I made the whole thing up. But Sierra believed it.
All right, send me the evidence then. You want to meet and talk, right? How about this Sunday afternoon at a cafe? Fine. Bring me the evidence then. I'll make sure Rodney pays.
After hearing Sierra say that, I hung up the phone with a sneer. Then, the next Sunday. As the time to meet Sierra approached, I left the house.
The car's ready. Let's go.
Denny, who had left the house earlier, opened the car door. I got in with a smile. After getting out of the car, I headed alone to the cafe where we agreed to meet. Sierra was already there when I entered.
Sorry for being late.
That's fine.
Just show me the evidence already.
Sierra extended her hand. I looked towards the entrance. Seeing the person there, I smiled and said to Sierra,
Before that, a friend is here. Do you mind if he joins us? Is it your boyfriend? Denny, right? Close one. We're married now, so Denny is my husband.
Saying that, I gestured towards the entrance. Sierra also looked over, laughing. In that moment, Sierra turned pale. At the same time, a loud voice filled the cafe.
Sierra! You're back in the States!
A man approached from the entrance. He was slightly older than us, dressed in a suit.
What? Why is Alexander here?
Well, a friend wanted to introduce me to his wife. The man referred to as Alexander turned around. And there was Denny. Denny spoke to Sierra. Nice to meet you, I'm Denny, Hannah's husband. I brought your affair partner. Hearing those words, Sierra stood up. As she tried to flee, I grabbed her hand.
What's the matter? He's your affair partner, right? Introduce him, he's the father of your child in your belly? The child in your belly?
Alexander looked at Sierra's pregnant belly. Then he burst into joy.
You're pregnant with my child. That's why you said you were going abroad.
By the way, Alexander is definitely Sierra's affair partner. Moreover, Sierra lied about going abroad. In short, she was trying to hide her pregnancy and the birth of her child. Because it would be troublesome if a man who's not her husband showed up at the hospital. But then, Alexander realized something. He slowly asked Sierra.
Didn't someone mention me as your affair partner just now? No. It's about someone else.
Sierra started making excuses while getting flustered. So, I decided to step in.
It's all a lie. Sierra is married, and you are just an affair partner. Don't be fooled. Hannah! Don't stir up unnecessary trouble.
Sierra tried to grab me, but in that moment, Alexander intervened.
Sierra, what's all this about?
Well, it's... Sierra started to say something, but Denny interrupted by showing a photo.
This is Sierra's husband. The rest is for you two to discuss. We'll be leaving now.
Denny took my hand, and we left the cafe. Later, I heard the cafe turned into a battlefield. Meanwhile, Denny and I headed to a nearby restaurant. Just as we arrived, Rodney also showed up.
Perfect timing, but who's that guy? He's my husband, Denny. I remember you had a fiancé.
I didn't want to have a long conversation right there, as it could lead to complications. I hurriedly urged everyone to enter the restaurant. Inside, we were led to a private room in the back. But then, the waiter said something unnecessary. Your companion is waiting inside. He said.
Is there someone else inside? A lawyer? Well, kind of.
It wasn't entirely wrong. I casually answered and entered the private room. Immediately, a woman's shrill voice was heard.
I've been waiting for you, Rodney. What? Layla!
Rodney seemed utterly shocked, nearly collapsing on the spot. Denny quickly supported Rodney. Then the woman called Layla spoke again.
Thank you for helping my fiancé. Well, it's nothing.
By the way, who might you be? Layla tilted her head. Her gesture was innocent as a young girl's. I felt it was cruel to make her cry, but I didn't hesitate to declare.
I'm Hannah, the sister of Rodney's ex-wife. And this is my husband, Denny. Oh, is that so? But why would the ex-wife's sister be here? Because I'm the one who invited you all here.
As soon as I said that, Rodney started to make a scene.
Shut up! Don't say anything unnecessary. I won't say anything unnecessary. I'm just going to tell her that you're already married.
The atmosphere froze at that moment. But I continued calmly.
After leaving my sister, Rodney remarried my best friend. Quiet! Don't say anything more!
Rodney continued to cause a commotion. Then Layla raised her voice.
Please be quiet. We're in the middle of a discussion.
Overwhelmed, Rodney closed his mouth. Seeing this, I continued.
Then, hiding the fact that he was already married, he started a relationship with you.
I narrated Rodney's current situation, his infidelities, and everything else. And ended with the fact that Rodney's current wife, Sierra, was pregnant.
So, you're saying I was being cheated on? Layla asked. Well, yes, that's how it appears. Regardless, it's good timing. My father is also here, so we can have a thorough discussion.
Layla gestured behind her. Looking back, there was a man with a fiery red face. So, that must be her father, I thought, and then Layla suddenly raised her voice.
You do know my father is a lawyer, right? Rodney, are you prepared?
Layla glared sternly at Rodney. Rodney, slightly intimidated, began to make excuses.
It's not like that. My wife Sierra has been cheating, and I was planning to divorce her. So, you're not yet divorced? No. I mean, that's enough. I will sue you,
Layla declared, and at that moment, Layla's dad grabbed Rodney.
So you're the father? Nice to meet you.
Rodney tried to smooth things over with a greeting. But it was futile. The room erupted into chaos, so Denny and I retreated outside. There, I told the staff who had rushed over due to the commotion.
There's a disturbance inside. Please call the police.
With that, the staff member called the police. The police arrived promptly. Later, we were also questioned, but ultimately it was treated as a family dispute and ended with a stern warning. However, while most were let off with that, it was not the end for Rodney. The police involvement became a problem at his workplace. Of course, the cause of the disturbance was thoroughly investigated. As a result, the affair came to light. Naturally, an affair alone would not lead to dismissal. But the company took issue with the police involvement. In the end, Rodney was pressured to submit his resignation and reluctantly left the company.
It's your fault. What are you going to do about it? If you feel bad, lend me some money. If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police, okay?
After that, he never contacted me again. It seems he really learned his lesson. Later, Rodney was sued by Layla and had to pay a hefty settlement. Sierra also had troubles with Alexander. Though she avoided a lawsuit, she was still required to pay compensation. Burdened with debt, Rodney and Sierra blamed each other and decided to divorce. They're now engaged in a bitter divorce battle. I doubt either will get any money in the end. By the way, to cover the legal costs and living expenses, they're both working at a well-paying construction site. I hope this time they truly reflect on their actions. Meanwhile, I reported the whole saga to Daisy over the phone.
That must have been tough. Are you okay, Hannah?
I'm fine. So, sis, just focus on delivering a healthy baby. Actually, after her divorce, Daisy remarried a former classmate she met at a reunion. She moved far away, but we still keep in touch frequently. Daisy is due to give birth soon, and thinking about it made me want a child too.
Maybe I'm pregnant too?
I gently stroked my stomach. It felt a bit warmer than usual.
I can't trust you to take care of Mom anymore.
Standing next to Georgie, who said this with a stern expression, Sophia is nodding over and over with a smug smile.
I, too, think it's better if we live with Georgie and his wife.
So, I want you to move out as soon as possible. Hearing those words, I felt my heart go cold. Anger bubbled up within me towards Sophia, who had always ordered me around, and towards Georgie and his wife, who had never lifted a finger to help. Seeing me like this, Georgie looked down on me with displeasure.
What's with that look? A disgrace who can't even properly care for Mom, acting all high and mighty.
My name is Olivia. I'm 32 years old and work for a major IT company. I live at my parents' house with my father, Kevin, and my mother, Sophia, both 62 years old. I have a very good relationship with Kevin, who has a solid personality. He introduced me to fishing, a hobby of ours, and we often go fishing together on weekends. On the other hand, Sophia has a free-spirited nature. Whenever I planned to relax at home on weekends, she would suddenly barge into my room saying,
"We're going on a trip right now. Get ready immediately."
Without listening to my opinion, she'd take me on trips on a whim, which happened quite frequently. My family also includes my older brother, Georgie, who is 3 years my senior. Like Sophia, Georgie acts before thinking, so his personality clashes with my cautious nature. We fought constantly as children, resulting in a strained sibling relationship. When Georgie and I would fight, Sophia often intervened to mediate, but she has always favored Georgie, telling me I was in the wrong and that I should apologize to him. Now that we're adults, we've stopped fighting, but looking back, it feels like Sophia always preferred Georgie. Georgie ended up marrying Cindy, a colleague from his work, 5 years ago after she became pregnant. This led him to move out of the house. There had been talk of living together, but Cindy refused, so that idea fell through, leaving Kevin, Sophia, and me to live as a trio. 4 years ago, Kevin died in a truck accident while at work. The sudden loss left me emotionally unstable, unable to cope, and it took me a long time to recover. But the shock of losing Kevin was even more profound for Sophia than it was for me. Sophia, who had been a housewife, stopped doing any household chores and secluded herself in her room after the accident. Then, misfortune continued when Sophia misstepped on the house's stairs, tumbling down and suffering severe injuries. Thankfully, it wasn't life-threatening, but she became physically dependent on care. Sophia, further disheartened by her injuries, not only secluded herself in her room but also stopped eating the meals I prepared. When I saw her after a long time, she had become emaciated. Thus, believing this situation wasn't good for Sophia, I resolved to use Kevin's inheritance and my savings to build a barrier-free house that would make living easier for Sophia. The construction proceeded smoothly and, while not a mansion, a functional, barrier-free house suitable for caring for Sophia was completed. Sophia seemed to like it very much and gradually began to regain her usual cheerfulness. Moreover, she couldn't walk around freely, but she started coming out of her room, sitting on the porch to relax. Since then, I've been living busy days, juggling work, household chores, and caring for Sophia. One day after work, I came home to find Georgie and his wife visiting with their child. And the laughter of Sophia and Georgie filled the entrance.
"I'm home. Oh, big brother, you're here. Welcome."
As I greeted them, Georgie, seeing me just home, said he wanted to talk. After changing from my suit into casual clothes, I headed to the living room where Georgie and the others were waiting.
"What's all this formality about? What's going on?"
I asked, and Georgie cheerfully responded.
"We were just discussing, and we've decided to live with Mom."
"So, Olivia, you need to leave this house." Despite refusing to live together when they got married, this sudden change of policy and the declaration of living with Sophia, along with the unreasonable demand for me to leave, left me unable to comprehend.
"This house isn't built for 2 families. With the child and all, we won't have enough rooms. So, Olivia, you need to leave. Besides, you're 32, right? It's not good to keep relying on your parents and living at home forever."
"That's right, Olivia."
"How can you not see that you're being a burden to Sophia? As an adult, you should have realized this without us having to say anything. It's time to stop depending on your parents and become independent."
While I was being unilaterally criticized by Georgie and Cindy, I wanted to argue that I wasn't actually depending on my parents.
"To be honest, I've always wanted to live with Georgie and the rest. He's our precious eldest son, after all. And Olivia, you've always been so cautious and slow, it's been frustrating to watch." Plus, I could never tell what you were thinking, which was creepy.
Sophia suddenly came out with her desire to live with Georgie and their family and revealed what she really thought of me.
Besides, even now, Olivia, you hardly do any housework because you're always busy with work. There's no point in living with Olivia, who is useless. Now that Georgie and his family have said they'll live with me, you should quickly pack your things and leave.
Sophia saw me not as a family member but merely as a convenient housekeeper. Due to my work commitments and coming home late during busy periods, I couldn't adequately keep up with household chores, prompting the suggestion that I leave. I could forgive the harsh words from Georgie and Cindy, but Sophia's words deeply wounded me. Since Kevin passed away, I've struggled to support Sophia, pushing through my fatigue after work to take care of the household and provide care for Sophia. Moreover, Georgie and his wife were living far from the house, so I couldn't rely on them for support. Additionally, my workplace is a bit far from home, requiring a considerable commute time. My job does not accommodate remote work, so I commute daily by train. I had thought many times about moving closer to my company after Kevin died. Yet, despite Sophia's profound grief over losing Kevin and her need for care, I chose to support her. But to her, it seems I was just a housekeeper. Feeling betrayed by Sophia, sadness and anger began to swell within me.
Busy with work and can't even take proper care of Mom, huh? Really, you're such a disgrace. You're failing as a family member. Stop half-assing it and just pack your bags and leave if you're that incompetent.
Hey, Georgie, don't you think calling her a failure as a family member is too much? Don't worry, Olivia. We'll live together and take perfect care of Sophia, just you watch.
Oh, Cindy, that's so reassuring. Unlike Olivia, you make me feel secure. This is how a family should be.
These words from Georgie and the others unleashed the pent-up anger and sadness within me. Understood. I'll get everything sorted and leave you to your freedom. Suppressing various emotions, I said just that and returned to my room. As I ascended the stairs to my room, the voices of Sophia and the others, gossiping about me, could still be heard from the living room. It seemed I was the only one who thought of us as a family. It appeared the others did not consider me part of theirs. Realizing this, the suppressed feelings of anger, sadness, and frustration came flooding back. After entering my room and closing the door, I decided to make a significant phone call, harboring strong emotions. 2 weeks after I left the house, I received a call from Georgie.
Hey. Mom isn't doing any household chores at all. What's going on?
According to Georgie, Sophia wasn't taking care of the house or the children at all, leaving them in a bind. I had assumed this would be the case since Sophia hadn't been doing chores even when I was living there, but it seems Cindy had different expectations. It turns out Cindy had hoped that, despite needing some care, Sophia's condition wasn't serious and that she could handle household chores and look after the grandchildren, allowing Cindy to take it easy. I couldn't help but feel astounded by Cindy's overly optimistic thinking and Georgie's complaints despite agreeing to it so readily. There was no way living together and relying on Mom from the start was going to work. Plus, we knew she needed care all along. What are you complaining about now?
I wasn't told she couldn't move around this much.
Georgie came up with excuses like a child.
And that's not all. People claiming to be from a real estate and construction company have been showing up, asking to see the house, causing us trouble. They're probably scammers, so we've been ignoring them. But they've been sending letters for a while, showing up at the house, and even calling. It's getting really annoying.
Georgie said this in frustration, and I calmly replied,
Oh, that's because I hired a professional service. I've sold the house, so you'll need to move out soon. What? Why are you selling Mom's house without permission? It's our house, don't mess around.
I ignored Georgie's yelling and explained that Sophia was already informed.
Why do you think the house I paid to build is Mom's, let alone yours? I built it, so it's my right to sell it. The buyer wants to demolish it and the surrounding land to build condominiums. They were thrilled to buy it. Why would you do something like that on your own? We're living there right now. Is this how you treat family? Who was it that said to leave because I was useless? Besides, it's my house that I bought, so I can do whatever I want with it.
As I countered Georgie, who tended to ignore inconvenient truths, he seemed to run out of arguments. Georgie suddenly changed his tone, pleading with me in a different voice.
Please! We were wrong! So, stop selling the house and cancel the demolition. Talk to the company and convince them to stop. I'll even let you live here. We'll make the rent cheap and even do some of the housework. How about that? It's not a bad deal, right? I'm saying we'll welcome you back into the family.
Even in this situation, Georgie seemed not to understand his position at all. Despite it being the house I bought, he's talking about charging me rent, assuming I'd do the housework, and saying they'd welcome me back into the family. I was utterly astounded by Georgie's arrogant remarks, informed him that a buyer had already been found and that the sale wouldn't be reversed, and he should leave the house without causing any more trouble for the company, then hung up. Georgie called again shortly after, but I blocked his number. Soon after, I received messages from both Cindy and Sophia, blaming me and asking to stop the sale of the house, but I replied with rejections to both and decided to block Sophia and Georgie's contacts, resolved never to see them again. A colleague who lives near the house I had built later told me about Sophia and Georgie's situation. After our call, the contractors moved in quickly to start demolishing the house. Sophia and the Georgies resisted until the end, trying to prevent the contractors from entering and spreading malicious rumors about illegal construction in the neighborhood, continuing their harassment and interference. I had warned the contractors in advance that these people were difficult and might cause trouble, so they were somewhat prepared. However, overwhelmed by the severity of their malicious harassment, the contractors reached their limit and threatened to call the police if the harassment and interference continued. Faced with cold stares from those looking forward to the new condominium and the mention of the police, Sophia and Georgie stopped their resistance and ceased their harassment. Demolition progressed smoothly after that, and Sophia and Georgie, having lost their house, hastily rented a small apartment nearby. However, Sophia continued not to do any housework or care for the children, and Cindy had to take on both household chores and care. Frustrations in living with Sophia accumulated, leading to daily arguments loud enough for the neighbors to hear. When Cindy could no longer bear it and sought Georgie's advice, he kept avoiding the issue, too busy with work to listen properly. Eventually, Cindy reached her limit and, one night while everyone was asleep, took the children and left Sophia and Georgie's place for good. Georgie frantically tried to contact Cindy but couldn't reach her, finding only a completed divorce application left behind. The apartment they hastily moved into was chosen in a rush, prioritizing speed without properly checking the interior or specifying detailed conditions. As a result, the living situation became difficult for Sophia, who needed care. After Cindy left, Sophia reluctantly began to do household chores but couldn't manage everything due to her injuries. Georgie also started doing household chores out of necessity, but having never done them before, the quality was terrible, leading to daily arguments with Sophia. Georgie, having been left by his wife and children and returning home tired from work, faced the stress of unfamiliar chores in caring for Sophia, appearing older than his actual age and becoming isolated at work. Originally, Georgie had an outgoing personality like Sophia's, with many friends and a fulfilling private life, but his mental state deteriorated due to his current lifestyle, leading to harsh behavior. Gradually, he lost friends and was avoided at work, becoming lonely. Moreover, Sophia has been looking for me recently, shouting my name around the house, becoming the talk of the neighborhood, as a colleague mentioned. As for me, I am now living abroad. My boss had always wanted me to go to our overseas branch, but I had declined due to caring for Sophia, who needed assistance. However, after being driven out of the house, I accepted the overseas transfer without hesitation and left for America. Life in a new environment is full of exciting new challenges. And while it requires a different perspective from America, I find it very rewarding. Before leaving America, a colleague who had long harbored feelings for me confessed, and we started dating. Though we are in a long-distance relationship, we found in each other the best partner to encourage and elevate one another. He proposed that we get married when I return to America, so I eagerly await my return, fully committed to my work. Freed from the troubling relationships of the past, I am savoring happiness and living fulfilling days.
I want to marry Thomas the doctor, so please divorce him, old woman.
One day, a young woman suddenly showed up at our house and said. Elizabeth, a bar girl who is 12 years younger than me, was leaning on my husband Thomas's arm as if seeking his affection.
Sure, but there's one condition,
I said with a smile, looking at both of them.
I'll file for divorce right in front of you. So, will you apply for your marriage certificate in front of me?
The two, momentarily confused by what was said, accepted with a smug smile. Trying not to burst into laughter, I headed to the family court with them to submit the divorce application. My name is Amelia. I'm 34 years old and work as an internist at a hospital. My husband Thomas, who is the same age, also works at the same hospital. Since we both have night shifts, our days off rarely coincide, and we don't have any children yet. While we used to get comments about grandchildren from my parents and parents-in-law, they've pretty much stopped now. Given our busy schedules and the possibility of being called into work unexpectedly, they seem to have accepted that grandchildren are off the table as long as I work at this hospital. Though I feel a bit guilty towards our parents, I find my job very fulfilling. Thomas likes his job too and occasionally attends skill upgrade training sessions. His hard work is well regarded in the hospital, and despite our busy schedules, we lead fulfilling lives. My discontent with Thomas began when the rules we set at the beginning of our marriage started to be ignored. Given our demanding jobs, we had clearly set some rules regarding household chores. One of them was that the person not on night shift would take care of the chores. Since our night shifts are irregular, it's difficult to divide the chores by day or type. Therefore, we decided to base it on the presence or absence of night shifts. Until now, if I was on a night shift, Thomas would cook simple meals and take care of cleaning and laundry. However, lately, even when he's not on night shift, Thomas is often out at night.
Hey, have you been leaving the house more often, even on nights you're not working?
Yeah. Sorry, I've been invited out for drinks a lot lately because the instructor seems to like me.
I used to decline, but it felt bad to always say no, and after I accepted once, the invitations just kept coming.
Sorry. I'll try to reduce the frequency. Indeed, the hospital is hosting various training sessions at this time. Some of which involve external instructors, I remembered, patting Thomas on the shoulder.
It's fine. It means you're just that wanted, right? Plus, the training sessions are only for about 2 more weeks. Don't worry about the house and just do your best.
Sorry, that helps a lot. Thomas is a good listener, which often leads me to share many things with him. It made sense why he was favored by the instructor. Though Thomas said he would use his own allowance for the drinking parties, at that rate, it would quickly run out. So, I decided to cover the expenses for the next 2 weeks from our living expenses. For the next 2 weeks, Thomas started going out at night whenever there were training sessions. Even after the training ended, the night outings continued. I thought he was busy with night shifts, but Ms. Brown, a veteran janitor, told me that wasn't the case.
Thomas hasn't been doing many night shifts lately. We'd prefer to leave it to the men, especially since we have many older staff in our department.
It turned out Thomas was going out at night even when he wasn't on night shift. Just when I was about to confront him, my schedule got so hectic that I didn't have the time to question him. By the time my schedule calmed down, I no longer felt like confronting Thomas. All I wanted was to come home and sleep in my bed. Exhausted, when I returned home after a night shift, there was an unfamiliar woman's umbrella at our house.
I'm home. Thomas, do we have a guest?
Welcome back. Sorry for the suddenness, but there's something we need to talk about. As I walked into the living room, I saw Thomas sitting on the sofa, with an unknown woman next to him. The woman, who looked like a college student, was snuggling up to Thomas.
Can I leave my bag here?
Yeah, that's fine. But I hope you can make it quick. The atmosphere clearly indicated it wasn't a good conversation, so I sighed and went to leave my belongings in the room. Without changing, I returned to the living room in my work clothes and sat on the sofa facing Thomas and the woman.
I believe this is our first meeting. What brings you here today? Nice to meet you. I'm Elizabeth. I came here today because I want you to divorce Thomas, old woman.
More than being called old woman by someone I just met, it was her lisping speech that irked me. Holding back my confusion, I looked at Thomas, who seemed flustered for a moment but then met my gaze firmly.
Elizabeth works at the bar where I went with the instructor. She's a college student working part-time to pay for her tuition, a very earnest girl. A college student? No offense, but how old are you? Are you even over 21? I'm 22. Old woman and I have a 12-year gap. Interesting, isn't it?
I wanted to challenge her comment about being interesting, but resigned myself to glaring at Thomas.
So, you cheat on me while I'm busy and now want to marry a younger girl and ask for a divorce, is that it? Why do you have to say it like it's something bad? I just want to protect Elizabeth for the rest of my life. You can live on your own, but Elizabeth needs me.
Thomas, that's so cool. Watching them engage in affectionate gestures before me made me sigh. Thomas was completely smitten by Elizabeth, finding everything she said adorable, which was incredibly annoying. Every time I called Elizabeth's name, she looked at me with a triumphant, smug smile.
Do you really want to marry this man? A man who goes to bars while married, brags, and lies. A man who takes the sales talk of bars seriously. Are you sure you won't regret it? Of course I want to marry him. After all, Thomas is a doctor and earns a lot. It's terrible to accuse him of lying. He's promised to stop going to bars once we're married. Thomas and I are in love, so it'll be fine.
Hearing this, Thomas hugged Elizabeth as if moved, and they once again retreated into their own world. I stared at Thomas in disbelief, but our eyes never met.
All right then. If you two have decided on that, I'll divorce you. But there's a condition. What's the condition? Division of assets?
At Thomas's words, I shook my head no. And then looked at them with a smile.
We're going to the family court together. I want Elizabeth to witness Thomas and I submitting our divorce application. After the divorce application is accepted, I want you two to apply for your marriage certificate in front of me.
That's all. The two, initially confused by what was said, stood up delighted when they realized that was the only condition. Then, the three of us headed to the family court. At the family court, Thomas and I first submitted our divorce application. I made a somewhat unreasonable request to the staff to expedite the process as much as possible. Later, when the divorce application was accepted, we went to the state office, where Thomas and Elizabeth applied for their marriage certificate. I helped them fill out the application forms and advised them on the necessary identification documents, all the while feeling the curious glances from those around us. The atmosphere of an ex-wife helping the new wife with the paperwork felt awkward, and the staff deliberately avoided looking at us. I felt a bit guilty, but I couldn't help feeling good about myself. Then, I returned home and moved all my belongings to my parents' house. Since I hardly ever shopped due to my demanding job and left the household items behind, there wasn't much to move except for valuables and clothes. I managed to pack everything into suitcases and moved out by car in less than a day. When I got back to my parents' house, they were furious with Thomas, but I calmed them down with a smile.
Don't worry. I'm not letting this go. I'll make sure both of them end up in a miserable situation.
3 days later, I was called to a meeting room through an internal phone line at the hospital reception.
A woman is here insisting on seeing the doctor. What should I do? Please direct her to an available room. I'll come over as soon as I finish my consultation.
When I arrived at the designated meeting room, unsurprisingly, it was Elizabeth. She was taken aback upon seeing me in my lab coat. Hello.
I've managed to spare 5 minutes between consultations, so let's make this quick, shall we? What do you mean? He wasn't a doctor, and you are, eh?
Elizabeth was panicking, but I didn't have the time to calm her down. I informed Elizabeth with a smile.
Indeed, Thomas works at this hospital, but he is a janitor. He's responsible for everything from cleaning to disinfection, a valued staff member.
What? He lied to me. Elizabeth slammed her fist on the meeting room table, ranting about Thomas. Didn't you listen? I told you, Thomas is a man who brags and lies about his status. Life might be tough from now on, but good luck.
This is a joke. If he's not a doctor, I don't need such a man.
I waved goodbye to the nearly explosive Elizabeth and left the meeting room. I heard her trying to stop me, but I rushed back to my consultation room with full speed. After exchanging high fives with the nurses who knew the situation, I calmed down and called in the next patient. Later, Elizabeth found Thomas working in the hospital and demanded a divorce. Elizabeth shouted that there was no point in being married if he wasn't a doctor, while Thomas loudly claimed that love doesn't care about professions. The spectacle was witnessed by waiting patients and nurses, quickly becoming the talk of the hospital. Despite whispers from onlookers, the heated argument between the two didn't subside until security had to intervene, nearly leading to police involvement. Elizabeth stormed out of the hospital, and Thomas followed her. Elizabeth returned home and caused a neighborhood disturbance by screaming at Thomas to divorce her and claiming the house, along with demanding compensation for being deceived. Around the time our divorce became known in the hospital, I filed for compensation against both of them for the affair. Thomas and Elizabeth came to my parents' house immediately after receiving the letter from the lawyer.
What the heck is this about demanding compensation? You didn't set any conditions other than remarrying Elizabeth. Why are you demanding compensation now?
They barged into the house without hesitation, ranting in front of my parents.
Well, Thomas, you cheated on me while we were married, And you, Elizabeth, knew he was married and still had an affair with him, right? So, of course, I'm going to demand compensation from both of you.
Don't be ridiculous. It's not my fault. I won't pay a cent.
You're so greedy even though you're a doctor. Your nature is so vile. Their yelling didn't bother me at all. Do you know why I included your remarriage in the divorce conditions? Thomas and Elizabeth looked puzzled. One reason is to make it clear that Thomas was having an affair while married to me. Normally, getting remarried just a few weeks after a divorce screams that the person was the affair partner. Though you didn't need to do that since you made a scene at the hospital and everyone already knows. The other reason is to ensure I could definitely get compensation from you. I thought Elizabeth was a fake name you used at the bar, and I had no idea where you worked or who you really were. So, I had you fill out the marriage certificate application and helped you with the process. Thanks to that, I got to see all your identification documents. Oh, and when you get married, you have to change your name and address on your driver's license, you know. While Thomas frowned, Elizabeth's face turned paler. So, I'll leave the rest to the lawyer. You can try to dodge or run, but don't forget I have all your personal information. Elizabeth, who works in a bar, must understand the importance of protecting personal information, as it could easily lead to her being stalked. As I smiled, Elizabeth ran off with heavy footsteps. Thomas, looking dumbfounded but irritated at me, followed after Elizabeth. In the now quiet house, I sighed and soothed my angry parents. Elizabeth has been paying the compensation smoothly. Considering she's a college student, I proposed a modest amount, so she should be able to finish paying within the year. Though she wants to divorce Thomas, he's resisting, and neither of them can afford a lawyer for divorce negotiations. Thus, they're separated but not yet divorced. It was also her fault for believing Thomas was a doctor just because she saw a family name similar to his on the hospital's medical staff list. Even though she's still a college student, working in customer service means she should know better than to blur the lines between customers and employees. Perhaps for her, a wealthy doctor was an ideal marriage candidate, but having an affair with a married man was wrong. Even if Thomas agrees to a divorce in the future, she'll have a divorce record. This incident has likely taught her a lesson that destroying someone's family carelessly can lead to dire consequences for herself. As for Thomas, he disappeared from the hospital without me having to do anything. In fact, Thomas, who had left the hospital to follow Elizabeth after she was expelled that day, was in the middle of his shift. As a result, Ms. Brown, a veteran janitor and Thomas's supervisor, was furious. With her face red with anger, she wrote in large letters on Thomas's work schedule that he was absent without permission due to a romantic entanglement. Thanks to that, even the janitors who were off that day came to know about it. Among the staff, that uproar became a major incident, and the patients spread rumors among themselves. As a result, Thomas was the subject of both true and false accusations and ended up being ostracized by everyone, ignored even in greetings, which seemed to break his spirit. One day, he suddenly resigned on his own. Afterward, he apparently returned to his father-in-law house, where his father-in-law, who was already informed of the situation, scolded him severely. There was no apology from Thomas, but I decided not to worry about it anymore since the full amount of compensation I had demanded was deposited by my mother-in-law. In the hospital, I received approaches from male doctors and nurses who heard I was single again, but I declined all of them, thinking I'm okay without marriage for a while. I continue to work as an internist, busy but dedicating time to each of my patients. You're nothing but a useless parasite. Get out of your parents' house now.
As I was moving down the hallway in my wheelchair, I was suddenly confronted by my brother's wife, Angela. Thinking it was just her usual harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then, she stood in front of me, blocking my way. Next thing I knew, I felt like I was floating, followed by a jolt of pain.
Ouch!
Angela had suddenly pushed me and my wheelchair to the floor. I felt a sharp pain in my arm and ended up crawling on the floor. Then, with a pleased smile, she kicked my wheelchair out of my reach.
Why are you doing this to me? You're in the way. I'm not giving back your wheelchair until you agree to leave your parents' house.
Angela always looked down on me, treating me horribly without remorse. At that moment, I realized I could never understand her and decided to leave the house I had grown up in.
Now this big house and all its wealth are mine.
Angela's face lit up with a devilish grin, delighted by the situation. At that moment, I vowed revenge against the truly terrifying Angela, who seemed willing to do anything for her own desires. I am Margaret, 33 years old. 3 years ago, on a rainy day, I fell down the stairs at the station. The fall caused a spinal injury, leaving me paraplegic, dependent on my wheelchair. When I first realized I couldn't move my legs, I cried tears of frustration. But now, I've accepted my reality and have adapted to work from home, doing what I can. I've always lived in my parents' house, which was remodeled 2 years ago to be wheelchair accessible. Being self-conscious, I mostly stay indoors. In my family home, I also live with my brother Kevin and his wife Angela, who married a year ago. Angela, my brother's wife, is 3 years older than me. I was initially excited to have Angela like a real sister, but that was a big mistake. The day Angela moved in, after unpacking, she smiled at me sweetly and asked in a gentle voice,
Now that we're living together, I'd love to have a heart-to-heart in your room to get along better, Margaret.
I'd love that. I really want to be friends with you, Angela. With high hopes for a pleasant future, I entered my room with Angela pushing my wheelchair. But as soon as the door closed, her kind expression vanished. She frowned like a different person and said something shocking. You know, you're an eyesore. Excuse me.
Are your ears as bad as your legs? Your presence in that wheelchair is an eyesore.
I was stunned by Angela's drastic change and managed a weak, uncertain smile, saying, You're joking, right? To which she berated me even more.
I hate jokes. Everything I said is my honest opinion. But you just said you wanted to get along. That was just an excuse to be alone with you.
Hearing this unexpected statement, my mind went into a panic and my hand, covering my mouth, started trembling. Wait a minute. I can't comprehend this. Does she hate me? As I took a deep breath trying to understand what was said, she hurled more insults at me.
People who live leisurely at home without working are called parasites.
Why are you being so harsh? Did you come to my room just to say these things? Yes.
I feel sick having someone who only consumes money living in this house.
I never imagined she could be this kind of person. My mind was still in turmoil, but I knew I had to respond. Looking her in the eye, I said,
I am working and paying for my living expenses. Don't lie. How can you work while staying at home? Are you stupid?
I explained that I work from home, but she didn't believe me at all. Instead, she demanded that I, a useless freeloader, leave the house. I was shocked by such harsh words from her, whom I had only met a few times since my brother's marriage. Confused and unsure what to do, she said, I can't stand even breathing the same air as you, and left the room. Alone, I kept replaying her words in my head. Should I tell my brother? As I was about to open my door, I remembered my past self. After falling down the stairs and losing consciousness, I awoke in the hospital to find my legs immobile. At that time, I couldn't accept this new reality immediately. Though I claimed to live facing forward, in reality, I hardly left my home, conscious of other people's eyes. Maybe Angela is in a similar situation. Instead of upsetting everyone by telling my parents and brother, I decided to wait and see. Surely, if we live together, we'll understand each other eventually. With that thought, I calmed my shaking heart. I tried to act cheerful around Angela, initiating conversations to get along better. But her cruel behavior only worsened day by day. She played the kind sister when our parents and brother were around, but as soon as they left for work, her harassment began. You don't work or pay, so you don't have the right to eat. One day, she threw away my lunch as soon as I sat down at the dining table.
I've told you before, I do work, and I contribute to the food expenses. I have the right to eat. If you lie too much, your nose will grow like Pinocchio's.
No matter how much I explained, Angela wouldn't listen. She insulted me and intentionally blocked my room door with objects to trap me inside. Unable to endure anymore, I told my parents and brother when they returned from work. I started talking when Angira is around, making sure she couldn't deny it.
I'm having trouble because Angela threw away my food and trapped me in my room. That's not true. She said she didn't like what I made and threw it away. I was cleaning and accidentally left the vacuum cleaner in front of Margaret's room. I'm sorry for not being useful. Margaret, I'm sorry for making you feel bad.
Angela acted like an actress, tearfully apologizing to me, and my parents and brother were completely deceived. I couldn't win against this. I started thinking that it would be better not to engage with her. After that, I hardly talked and spent more time in my room. One day, a year later, as I was returning to my room after breakfast, she started yelling at me in the hallway.
Still planning to stay in your parents' house? You're so persistent. I'm sick of this pest. You useless parasite, get out now.
Being used to her harassment, I pretended not to hear. But then she stood in front of me, blocking my path. Please move aside. As I tried to push past, Angela laughed and forcefully kicked the side of my wheelchair. I was hit by a severe impact and toppled over before I could steady myself. A sharp pain shot through my arm. I tried to get up, but I couldn't right my wheelchair lying on its side. Crawling on the floor in pain and humiliation, I looked up to see she standing over me, looking smug. Desperately looking up, I saw her trying to suppress a laugh, her arms crossed, clearly enjoying the situation. How pathetic you look. What a spectacle.
Please, help me.
Well, if I must.
There.
She kicked my wheelchair even further away, putting it out of my reach.
Don't you think this is too much? I have to do this to get rid of a parasite, don't I? Give me back my wheelchair now. Not until you say you're leaving this house.
So, what will it be? Looking down on me and acting so cruelly with ease, I realized I could never understand her. I decided to leave the home I'd grown up in.
Fine. I'll move to a high-rise condominium. A high-rise condominium?
As if you could afford that. Your denial is just sad.
I don't care if you don't believe me. I'm leaving. Please return my wheelchair. Just wait for the caretaker who's due soon. I'm finally getting rid of the nuisance. Now this big house and all its wealth will be mine. Get on your precious wheelchair and start packing.
That's when I realized her true nature. She would go this far for her own desires. Such a terrifying person. She looked like nothing but a devil to me, leaving me on the floor without returning my wheelchair, and then leaving the house. The floor was cold. And I was getting colder. I need to do something. Lying in the hallway in the middle of winter, my body temperature dropped rapidly. I tried to crawl to my wheelchair, but my injured arm was too weak to move. What if I stay like this? Shivering from the cold, I heard the front door open, and the caretaker arrived.
Help me, please!
Hearing my cry, the caretaker rushed over in a panic. Rubbing my injured arm unconsciously, the caretaker noticed something was wrong and immediately took me to the hospital. Luckily, there were no fractures, just bruises, so I was prescribed some ointment. Back at home, filled with frustration, I started preparing to move. I won't let this go. I'll show everyone her true nature. And so, the day of my move arrived. Angela had finished breakfast and was getting ready to leave. Hurrying to the entrance, she said to me, "Make sure you clean up and leave before I come back.
And never return to this house. Don't worry. I'll leave without leaving a trace." Then goodbye.
Forever. She left in unusually high spirits, her voice lively. I wonder what face she'd make if she knew the tragedy about to befall her. Get ready, my plan is almost complete. Despite saying this, it was hard to leave my cherished home. I said my farewells, touching the pillars and walls for the last time. Goodbye, my dear home. Thank you for everything. As the moving truck drove away, I watched the house disappear from view with a sense of longing. And true to my word to Angela, I moved into the top floor of a high-rise condominium. Watching the outside view, evening came before I knew it. The setting sun peeked through the buildings, illuminating my face.
So beautiful. I can see this every day from now.
Despite everything, I was filled with hope for my new life when my mobile phone rang. Seeing Angela's name on the screen, I calmly answered the call.
What's going on? The house is empty.
I've moved out, as you can see. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up now.
Wait. Who gave you permission to do this? There's no TV, no air conditioner. I bought everything in the house, so no permission was needed. What? Don't be ridiculous. Return everything. I won't give back what's mine. By the way, I paid for the house's renovation and utilities. I should be asking you for money. What? You're kidding, right?
I'm serious, as you hate jokes.
And yes, I moved to a high-rise condominium. The view from the top floor is amazing.
I took the opportunity to tell her the truth she never listened to.
Did you realize you were bullying someone who provided you food and shelter? That's impossible. I never took anything from you. How did a homebody like you make money? I'm a stock trader. That's a transparent lie. I worked for the securities company before my accident. Trading stocks is easy for me. I have $3 million in savings now. Wait. Are you saying you, not your parents, are the wealthy one?
Yes.
I let my parents and Kevin save their earnings for retirement. What? I married into the family thinking they were rich.
Angela's true intentions spilled out. I knew it but had to ask, and she confirmed my suspicions.
Didn't you love Kevin? Love doesn't fill the stomach. I thought you were rich after seeing the big house. I was so fooled. You misunderstood on your own. By the way, I invest in properties too. I own several apartments besides this condo. The wealthy and victorious one is me. You misjudged, sadly. What? I won't forgive you. Make a fuss if you want. You should worry about yourself. Why?
I've put that house up for sale.
We're still living there. That's terrible. My parents and Kevin moved with me, so you're left alone. Oh, and Kevin has blocked your calls and emails. What?
I almost laughed at her loud and shocked reaction. She frantically tried to contact Kevin, but of course, got no response. I revealed more truths she didn't know. I owe it to you, Angela, for pushing me in the wheelchair and causing my injury.
Thank you. What? The caretakers saw everything and told my family, so they helped me.
Actually, we had secretly planned to move out without you. Moreover, my brother prepared something to definitely trap you.
Remember last night when Kevin suggested you go out today to make moving easier? That was to clear the house before you knew it.
She was silent for a moment, then suddenly changed her tone, trying to sound sweet.
Margaret, I think I went a little too far. Let's be close from now on. Okay?
Telling such lies will make your nose grow like Pinocchio's.
I wish we could be real sisters, Margaret.
I can't stand this nonsense. By the way, this whole conversation is on speaker, and my family is listening. No one will forgive you. Kevin is divorcing you, so please live well on your own.
She, realizing she couldn't persuade me, made a last-ditch effort.
Kevin, can you hear me? You're joking about the divorce, right? He doesn't seem interested in responding. He's laughing and enjoying your desperate situation. Shut up. Let's talk properly. I'll find your condo and come right now. Tell me where. Please.
Everyone burst into laughter at her, thinking she could still be forgiven. But knowing her, she might try to find our new home, so I sternly warned her. If you force your way into the condo, I'll sue you for trespassing.
Don't say such scary things.
I'm serious. And about the injury and mental distress you caused, I'll sue for compensation. I have the hospital reports, so you can't escape. Pay $20,000.
I'll be broke. You don't need the money, you're rich.
I'm asking for compensation to make you reflect. If you don't agree, talk to my lawyer. Goodbye forever.
I don't care about poor Kevin, but I don't want to lose wealthy you. I apologize. Please forgive me.
No way, you fool. I hung up forcefully. I gave Angela's photo to the condo's doorman, warning him about her, so security will respond if she steps foot inside. My brother, not wanting to see Angela's face anymore, had a lawyer I know finalize the divorce. Angela, who squandered my brother's earnings, only got $2,000 in the property settlement. She was living in the house we put up for sale, but the real estate buyer found her and she was fined for trespassing. Angela, now a criminal, is shunned even by her family and is lost without a home. I demanded the promised $20,000 in compensation. We will make sure she pays. Our family is living spaciously in a new high-rise condo, enjoying every day. Although I liked my big detached house, the view from the expansive windows, unobstructed by my wheelchair, is refreshing. The city lights at night bring a new joy.